Oh, you know what? I'm a sucker. Don't you ever say I don't do anything for you. I'm going to tell you about the dump truck this week. So, the dump truck story. Ever since I was a little girl, I've always loved dump trucks. I don't know what it is about them. They're just really cool to me. I've always loved them. But there's not a whole lot of dump trucks in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where I grew up. It's a little university town. Not a lot of dump trucks, funnily enough. So I'd never seen one in real life, just on TV and in pictures. And fast forward a couple decades, I'm working for BHP, and they have some dump trucks, as it is. So I first came here as an intern, and I was raised in a family of you don't get anything if you don't ask for it, and the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you is someone's going to say no. So as soon as I started working as an intern here back in 2018, anytime I met a new manager or anyone with any sort of pull around here, I would, conduct myself professionally, but at the end of the meeting, I would close with, and by the way, I'd just like to say, I really like dump trucks. I would love to go see a dump truck. If there's any way that you could get me an opportunity to go see a dump truck or even ride in one, I would really appreciate that. And I was mostly doing it as a joke to mess with people, to be honest. No one's going to pay to send an intern up to go see a dump truck. That's a complete waste of resources. At least that was what my thinking was. And, but I thought it was funny just to see the look on people's faces because it comes out of left field, doesn't it? And, most of the managers would be like, okay, yeah, I'll look into that. Or, some of the more politic ones would be like, oh, well, I'll certainly take that into consideration. Like, okay, fine. Again, just getting asked at all was funny to me. But I kept asking, and they hired me. I became a full employee on March 4th, 2019, and I would continue asking, and, continuing to work here, puttering away, doing my own thing, but anytime I met anyone high ranking, I really like dump trucks. I would really like to go see a dump truck. And if there's any way that you could make that happen, I would really appreciate that. And then one year, in 2021, last year, in about July, I got to meet Edgar Bastow. For those of you who are not familiar with Edgar Bastow, he is the head of Minerals Australia. He reports directly to the CEO. So, got a bit of pull. And I got to meet him because he came to speak to my interns about coming up through BHP. He started at the bottom, now he's here, doing very well for himself. And, what it's like to work in a large company as a minority, as someone who, I don't know what his background is not English first language necessarily, and coming up and, working in a business space. And, as my interns, they're mostly English first language, they live here, but I felt like although their stories aren't really the same at all, autism, immigration, still I felt like Edgar might have some stuff to say about perseverance and difference. And he did. It was a great talk. I had a great time listening to him. Gosh, he's an interesting man. And they closed out the meeting with, thank you so much, Edgar, for coming and talk to my interns. I know they really appreciated it. I appreciated it. And I just wanted to say before you go, I really like dump trucks. I would love to go see a dump truck. And if there's any way that you could make that happen, I would really appreciate that. And Edgar said, okay, and left. And then the next week, I ran into him at the Resources Technology Showcase, which is, it's a big expo. It happens annually over at the conventions. It's the convention center, but I'm used to calling it the convention shed. Me and all my friends call it the convention shed. Australians were very dismissive. And I ran into him there just because I was walking around and he was there and talking to some executive from Caterpillar. I assume they were an executive from Caterpillar because they were wearing a Caterpillar shirt. I figured their name was probably not Caterpillar. And I figured it was probably an executive because it's Edgar freaking Basto. If he's talking to someone, it's going to be an executive. Someone pretty high ranking. And I said, went up to him and I said, "Hey, Edgar! Fancy running into you again. Thank you so much for talking to my interns last week." And, oh, he was so nice talking to my autistic interns. Hi, Mr. Caterpillar guy. Anyway, thanks again for doing that. And I noticed you're talking to someone from Caterpillar. Caterpillar makes dump trucks. I love dump trucks so much. And if I love them, and I've always wanted to go see one, and if there's any way that you can make that happen, Edgar, I would really appreciate that. And Edgar's like, yeah, cool, email me. Like, oh my god, Alexandra, do not embarrass me in front of the Caterpillar executive. So I go away. But he did say to email him. Email's free. Why not? Hi, Edgar. Per your request, I have emailed you about dump trucks. Thank you very much, Alexandra. And I don't hear anything back. Okay, fine. And then he emails me back. And he CCs in Vanessa, someone else I got to meet at BHP. She's a lovely woman. CC's in Vanessa and says, "Hi, Alexandra. We're going to get you that dump truck visit, and Vanessa's going to make it happen." And she did. And I went up there, and we figured out, okay, it makes sense for me to go up there if I'm going and doing neurodiversity talks. So I spent the day doing neurodiversity talks. I talked to 3 different groups of people. I went up in the morning at dark 100, like 5 o'clock or something the flight was, so I was up at like 2. And flew up there, and they drove me around, and I talked to a bunch of different people about neurodiversity, why it's important, what we can do better. I talked to the mental health team they have up there. They have a really crack mental health team over at Yandy, just like all of our Mindsites, of course. And really great experience. And look, honestly, I thought they'd probably just let me get my photo taken with a dump truck, and that would be cool. But then they suited me up in some PPE, gotta be safe, and I actually got to go on a dump truck ride. It was really cool. They did not let me drive. I actually don't have a normal driver's license, so I definitely should not be driving a dump truck. And even if I had a normal driver's license, there's all this additional certification you have to do. It's, they're very, very hardcore about safety. But there was one button I was allowed to push, and that was the button to raise and lower the staircase, because the dump truck is so gosh darn big that there's a staircase that you have to climb just to get up there. And I got to go up it, and they let me retract the stairs, and then I figured we'd just do like a little lap of the oval kind of thing. Nope. We drove down into the pit, and we got a load of, it was one of the little digger trucks, and he put ore in the back of the dump truck, and then we drove out of the pit, and he drove us over to the ore crusher, and then he pulled the lever, and the truck bed went back, and tipped into the ore. It was like the full dump truck experience, like everything that you can do in a dump truck, we got to do. Well, he did it and I was there, I guess. But it was so cool. And it was just absolutely the best. So thank you very much, Edgar and Vanessa and everyone else who made that trip possible. And I just had the most wonderful experience. And that was the end of the day. And I flew home. And boy, I was knackered by the end of it. But it was so cool. And that was actually about a couple weeks before I got to meet Liam, the boy who dressed up as Brookfield Place, and we got to make his dream come true of getting to see Brookfield. I think there's a video around here somewhere of, I got a book from that, a little picture book, from him as a thank you gift. And that was really special because it was my dream to go on the dump truck, and I finally did get to. And then I got to fulfill his dream, and it was a really just a really unique experience getting to see a dream like that from both sides. And I think that it getting to be like that made it a very special experience. I'm probably repeating myself and saying special over and over again, but it was. Because I knew just how much it meant to him, because I knew how much it meant to me. And that's my dump truck story. So I like to tell that story a lot because it's a funny damn story. And sometimes people ask me, okay, so you got your dump truck ride. What do you want to do next, Alex? Well, y'all know Thomas Tank Engine? Okay. There's actually a sort of sister show to Thomas Tank Engine, made by a lot of the same people that made that show, called Theodore the Tugboat. It's a Canadian show, and it's set in a port in Nova Scotia, Canada, and it's all the little tugboats that work in the port, and all the different boats that go in there. There's a submarine. There's different types of cargo ships. There's a cruise ship. Even the bridge has eyes, I think, and the harbor master, the wharf control tower is sentient as well, because that's how these shows work. And I loved Theodore the Tugboat to bits when I was a child. There's actually, you can go to a museum in Nova Scotia and see the original boats, and that's definitely on my bucket list. But I've always loved tugboats, and tugboats work in ports, and BHP operates Port Hedland. So, for my next trick,